did he die, man?
Well, Dr. Pepper signed the certificate natural causes, but I should have thought from the look of the poor fellow that he died of fright.
This is a frightened village. Here, it is wiser to close your ear to a scream in the night. In this place, even familiar things take on an odd and terrifying significance. A funeral moves under the cloak of night, but no one inquires who has died, nor why the corpses are dispatched with such desperate haste. Starring Peter Cushing as the parson who knew every secret of the night creatures. Yvonne Romaine and Oliver Reed as two young people who loved in the shadow of terror.
I've always been respectful to you, haven't I? But I've had to keep my real feelings to myself until now.
Patrick Allen as the courageous Captain Collier, who sailed the seven seas in search of danger and found it in The Night Creatures.
Hello, welcome to Movie Humpers. My name is Bob Sham.
My name is Angela. Welcome to Movie Humpers.
Welcome.
Welcome.
The sounds you hear may be dogged. It's Halloween Hump Fest.
Welcome to the show.
Welcome to Halloween Hump Fest. Welcome. 5 days a week, you're welcome to join us. 5 days a week, all October long, for welcoming conversations about horror films. Each weekday represents a different subcategory. And on Wednesdays, grab the kids. Because it's Hammer Horror Hump Days every Wednesday.
You're welcome.
A lot of these movies are going to feature a fellow by the name of Oliver Reed, and today is no exception. But we also get the return. We fell in love with him last year when we were talking about Hammer Horror, because he played Van Helsing in a couple of the Christopher Lee movies.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm Southern. I can't do vampire.
Hey, that was not a dig. I love it when you say it like that.
Vampire.
Them vampire movies.
Dang. Yeah, what was I saying? It's Hammer Horror Hump Fest. Today we're discussing the film Night Creatures. That's what it's called in the United States of America. But in England, they called it Captain Clegg. Night Creatures is a better title.
Yes, you were talking about who is Captain Clegg and how much we love him.
Yes, well, we don't want to reveal too fast here, right? We got a mystery on our hands.
Oh, right. It's a mystery.
But Night Creatures is a better title, but it kind of oversells it. Whereas Captain Clegg, it is pretty much that, right? It's like a spooky adventure. This reminds me of like classic horror, where the sense of, your Edgar Allan Poe days type horror, where the sense of fear, the idea of dread is as scary as the dreadful thing itself. We're talking about Night Creatures / Captain Clegg from 1962, directed by Peter Graham Scott, written by Anthony Hines, starring Peter Cushing, Oliver Reed, Patrick Allen. Yvonne Roman also makes a return. We talked about her last week. Milton Reed, Martin Benson, and more. Cinematography by Arthur Grant from Hammer Films. Night Creatures. We're going to call it Night Creatures because we're sticking more horror theme. But if you call it Captain Clegg, I'm not going to be mad at you. There is some spooky elements to this, but first criticism off the top, showing a little more of the spooky stuff would have been nice.
Yes, much more spooky stuff.
And we're coming in loaded. We're wanting the spooky stuff, and we get a little bit of it, and we want more.
It is a Hammer horror film.
It's in my Hammer horror collection.
Come on.
It is a horror. I mean, it's like three things. It's like adventure, mystery, and horror wrapped up into one.
With a
twist. It's
like
a masterpiece theater
twist.
Horror, right?
Yes.
But the horror part is there are allegedly phantoms that haunt the marshland.
Many legends have come from this corner of England, but none so widely believed or widely feared as the legend of the marsh phantoms who rode the land on dark, misty nights and struck fear into the hearts of all who crossed their paths.
So we see images of people dressed like skeletons riding ghosts, and they look cool.
They look so cool. The skeleton, you said riding ghosts. They're riding skeleton horses. They're riding skeletons riding skeleton horses.
And they look cool, and we could have used a couple more scares here, and I think I have another couple of ideas that mean nothing, but I'm going to give them anyway. But other than all that, other than the wanting a little more spookiness than we got, this story, all in all, is actually quite fun.
Yes, I really liked it.
And we figured it out pretty quick what the deal is. Let's get started here. As we're getting started here, I should acknowledge that, when we talk about movies going back in time, let's be honest, right? A lot of movies, when you go back, there's a lot of aspects of it that seem a little more troubling when you look at it into modern times. And this movie is probably, in a specific way, one of the more racist movies we'll ever discuss.
Yeah.
And usually we don't harp on that because it should go without saying that times now are a little bit more with it, more enlightened than they were then. We don't want to belabor that point and try to be like, oh, I can't believe we know why they did it, But I think it's important to talk about this one in particular because there's a character
whose name in the movie, the only name they give him in the movie,
is mulatto,
yes,
which means multiracial. In England, this actor is half Indian, half English.
Okay.
So that's the first character we see is this guy, and he has had his tongue cut out and his ears
they call it
shredded.
Split. They cut down the center of his ear.
And then they essentially crucify him and leave him to suffer because
he attacked Captain Clegg's wife. And that is considered treason because Captain Clegg is the captain of the ship that he's on.
Sexual assault.
Yes.
Now, this is troubling, even knowing that, you're going to encounter this when you go back into watching old movies. But this is particularly troubling because this character's only name is the mulatto.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's that idea of that scare bait idea when talking about other races of like, oh, they're going to come after your women and shit.
Yeah.
And so the movie plays it as though he literally did rape this woman. And as we're going in and the mulatto, which this is the last time, I don't want to call him the mulatto throughout the rest of this discussion. So we're going to call him Milton because he's...
Okay, I was going to say we could call him the prisoner because that's what
we're going to call him Milton because he's played by Milton Reed. And Milton does manage to survive because he's found by these British officers. It's in like the late 1700s. And they take him on almost as like this bloodhound for sniffing out booze that the king didn't tax or something.
Yeah, they do not treat him like a human. They treat him like an animal. They keep him chained up. They feed him scraps. They get him riled up for fun. They're really mean to him. But yes, they were a different ship that was following Captain Clegg's ship, trying to catch him.
It's
and
Captain
overtake him.
Clegg who did this to him, and then they took off.
Yeah, so they left him on a beach to die, and this other ship that was chasing Captain Clegg stopped and got him, thinking he could be useful.
Yeah.
So they saved him as a slave.
Yeah, so even though he was rescued, he's not being treated any better. And as I'm watching this movie and we see the journey of Milton, I keep thinking like, oh, it's going to be sweet revenge for Milton. But then I had to keep reminding myself that the movie doesn't posit that Milton is a good person. In fact, there's really, other than Yvonne Roman's character, there really is no good people in this movie.
There's no good people in this movie. Maybe the wife of the man who runs the bar who raised Yvonne. She's probably good. She probably doesn't know what's going on.
So here's what I want to posit here, because we've watched hundreds of movies for the show alone, many more beyond that. And I've got some fantastic movie literacy. Here's what I'm thinking. Now, as I've alluded to, that old dog, well, it's not really a dog whistle because it's just blatantly racist, where historically white groups would accuse minority groups of trying to sleep with their women. Mm-hmm. But there was also a thing in which often the white women would be consensual with minority groups and then get caught, and then the white women would turn on them to protect themselves, and then horrid things would happen to the minority person. So here's my proposition as we accept as fact for the rest of this movie, which actually may completely change the way you look at the movie. Milton and Captain Clegg's wife
We're in love.
were consensual.
I love that.
And I think it makes sense, because if he really raped Captain Clegg's wife, why is Captain Clegg going to do this whole trial rigmarole and then leave him breathing? If somebody sexually assaulted you that was like in my vicinity, that'd probably be the one time in my life where I might kill someone.
Yeah.
You know? And this hardened pirate is just going to like have some big show and then maim him and then throw him on an island. No.
This makes so much sense, because that would only be if she begged him for mercy.
Yeah.
Don't kill him.
Yeah. And
Please don't kill him. If you
maybe
get rid
she
of him, fine.
privately did, but can't claim too much.
Exactly.
Because all these other dudes. But fortunately, so now we got a new way of looking at it, right?
Yeah, I love this.
But fortunately, Captain Clegg is dead. And when we see right on his tombstone that he was hung by the British at this area, this port, which I forget the name of.
He was hung in this town, yes, and there's very few people in the town who remember him. There's only one person who remembers him, and that is the preacher who tells the British officers that he did the last rites. So this weird thing happens at the beginning that...
The preacher played by Peter Cushing.
Played by Peter Cushing.
Peter Cushing is great in this.
He's so good at
Even
this.
though, like, he's evil.
He is Rasputin-esque
He
in
kinda,
this movie.
He's a player, for
It's
sure.
so good. You kind of have to piece together the beginning. You don't really know what's happening at first, but these British sailors land and they go to this town in sort of a back way. And they have Milton with them, and they are going, like you said, to find liquor that hasn't been taxed for the king. And so there's a little boy watching guard and signals to the town that the soldiers are coming. They go into high-speed mode, hiding all their alcohol. That's when we sort of figure out, oh, they're coming to find alcohol.
And we mentioned that they're by a marsh that is haunted by these phantoms, and
Yes.
we see an old man get completely literally scared to death when he encounters these phantoms.
He does. He dies, and he is, come to find out, someone who, he's the one that tipped off the British soldiers that they had illegal booze. They have a really interesting system there. There's secret passageways, and they smuggle the liquor that they're making in caskets. And the guy who makes the caskets goes way back with our preacher man as well.
Mm-hmm.
They've been friends for a very, very, very long time.
And when they'll bring Milton out because they've captured him. He's their slave, and he has them sniff out for any hidden booze. But it's pretty clever, as they'll have one part of a cask contain like
it was
varnish, which could give the scent of that. But then you open up, and the other half part of it is the booze, the gin, or whatever the fuck.
It was a passageway to the room where all the booze were.
Oliver Reed's character, who's in love with the lady of the town, who's played by Yvonne Roman. The last movie, she played his mother. So now he's fucking his mom in this one.
Yeah, that was weird. But
it's not really weird. We just have to understand that they're different characters.
I know.
You're just so emotionally connected. You can't.
We got to hear her speak, though.
Yeah, she does. Is she Spanish, French? I can't tell. But she did not speak in our last film that we discussed.
Yeah.
But our last Hammer film, but she does
I
speak
haven't
in this
looked
one.
up. I haven't looked her up. I don't know. But I do really like her. She has been raised by the man who owns the bar and his wife, or an inn. And
she's also looked after by the priest, as played by Peter Cushing.
He's sort of seems as though he's like a godfather character to her, but she was raised by those folks, and she works in the bar. And the men are not nice to her because she's gorgeous, and they want to get at her.
The head British officer, his name is Captain Collier, and he's fairly clever in that he knows something is up. He hasn't found the evidence yet, but he knows some things are bullshit. The people in this area, you can tell that they're all in on it.
Except.
And he's trying to, and they keep trying to rizz him up by like giving him good liquor from their personal stock.
The one that doesn't know anything about it is Oliver Reed's dad, because he is ostensibly the sheriff. That's not what they call him. He's like I don't remember his title, but he's the law. And so he does not know what's happening.
Well, the British officers come in and they have Milton with them. And Milton gets one look at the priest, played by Peter Cushing. Milton looks into his eyes and just attacks him. And right then we figured it out. Why else would Milton attack this man of all people when we know who fucked him up? And yet we've never seen the face of Captain Clegg. But he's so important. He's always on the lips of all these people. His legacy is important. I mean, I think most anyone will come to the conclusion at this point, early on, that Peter Cushing is Captain Clegg. That's the reveal here. We're going to go ahead and jump in and give the reveal.
Absolutely. Because also, this is where we find out that he, as the priest, he is the priest. He preaches. People come to his church. But he is also the ringleader of the liquor underground railroad. And
thus we have also realized that the specters in the Phantom Marsh are actually the crew. And they also have like a scarecrow that a dude gets inside, Oliver Reed gets inside, to scout if people are coming and when they're coming. Mm-hmm. And yeah, the ghosts at the Phantom Marsh are the crew that are smuggling liquor.
No. I don't think they're the crew that are smuggling the liquor, because the crew smuggling the liquor have a covered wagon and they're on horses with the wagon, but they have that whole thing. The men,
they're scaring people off.
They're scaring people off. They have scared the entire town. No one in the town goes out after dark. Yeah. And you definitely don't cross the marsh. And that is because they have made it that way so that they can do whatever they want under the shade of darkness. What am I saying? Under darkness.
Under the shade of darkness.
I know.
Again, they look cool when they're riding in their skeletal outfits. They got their horses up in skeletal outfits. They glow in the dark. We really could have used one or two more scenes of them just scaring the fuck out of somebody. And I really, as much as I do like the story a lot, I think that would have lent it a lot to give it more of a scary weight to it.
And they looked so cool. And we only saw them a couple times before they just showed us that they were men.
Well, Captain Collier and the British troops, they're catching on and they start to close in. And it comes to a full reveal. Captain Clegg is Peter Cushing.
Oh, before it's like crazy out in the open, two things happen that are very important. Girl, Yvonne,
they dig up the grave too.
Milton digs up the grave because he goes to try to kill Clegg, but he's not able to do that. So he digs up the grave so that everyone will know that he's not in there and not dead. Then Yvonne finds out that Captain Clegg is her father,
right?
Because her caretaker finds out, and when he realizes who her father is, for some reason he thinks that now he gets to have sex with her because otherwise he'll tell her secret. And she gets away from him. She goes immediately to the priest and is like, you have to help me. You have to help me. I'm the daughter of Captain Clegg, and Oliver Reed is in love with me. And if he ever finds this out, he's not going to want to marry me. And Oliver Reed is like, baby, I know.
What is it, Imogen?
My father was Captain Clegg.
Yes, I know.
You know.
Dr. Blitz told me some time ago. He asked me to keep it a secret.
You knew all the time.
Perhaps you'd like to escort your fiancé back to the inn, Harry? Yes.
I know, baby.
I know.
The pussy too good. I'm throwing away my classic British sense of classism and racism because the pussy too good. But this is the second week in a row in our Hammer Horror Features where we get a rape baby where the mother dies in pregnancy.
Yes, and so this is when we
find
out
that. They love rape babies where the mother dies in pregnancy.
That she is the product of the love between Milton and Mrs. Clegg.
Correct, love.
And when Clegg went to this island to fake. He did not fake his death. He has scars on his neck.
That was cool. That was a cool detail. Like, he actually was hung and survived.
Yeah, but he was saved, but they made it look as though he had died.
You're right, Captain Collier. Clegg was hanged. At least the rope was placed around his neck, and the trap was sprung. But he had many friends. The hangman was in the plot to rescue him, and Clegg escaped.
And they buried an empty casket, and he became the priest, and no one really knew there because they sort of founded a whole town. And
that's an excellent matter of timing when you're actually on the end of that
to have the
noose,
kind of scars
and then
he
have
has.
people come to get you just in time.
And the only person that we know for a fact that was one of his men is the guy that makes the coffins.
Yeah.
They've been together since before all this, and he's his loyal person.
When the story, as obvious as the story was to us, you really had to admire how it was broken down and the process they had to smuggle things and the secret departments and all that they had going on here.
One of the things you also mentioned is that about the scarecrow, because they are taking liquor at one point, and it's very clever, but Oliver Reed crawls inside of this scarecrow so he can tell them when he sees the British officers who do show up. And so they are like,
That scarecrow moved, sir.
we saw that scarecrow move. And so they take a shot. And then suspension of disbelief, because they walk straight to the scarecrow and he's gone.
He's just very...
Oliver Reed now
has
did
a
I call
wound
him Oliver North a second ago? Oliver Reed has a
one
gunshot wound.
One of our greatest Americans, Oliver North.
God damn it. So he has this gunshot wound through his arm, and that's another way that they figure out that it's all a conspiracy. But Preacher Clegg tells Oliver Reed and Yvonne, go, leave, get married. I love you. Be happy. You're my daughter. I want you to marry her. Get out of here. And they do. And as far as we know, they had a happy life.
But oh, poor Clegg, he's still got to pay. And the movie is presenting to him like Peter Cushing, again, great in this. He talks about how he acknowledges that his old life was not a good one. He was not a good person.
No man can stand upon the gallows without coming face to face with his soul. Now, on that day, truly the old Clegg died. What the new Clegg has done, you all know. When I first came here, I found you in wretchedness and poverty, deprived by harsh laws and heavy taxes of the simple comforts all men have a right to expect. I took upon myself the task of changing all that at the expense of the revenue. What I did was for the good of you all.
We know that he just killed a man for having consensual relations with his wife.
Consensual relationships?
Consensual. It's when you have consensual sex. It's called consensual. You ever meet like a biker, right? I'm not talking about the weekend warriors. I'm talking about the road-worn bikers, and they're old, and they're like, "Can I talk to you about the Lord, brother?" Those guys did the worst shit. They did Altamont times 300 with tons of sides of sexual assault. Those dudes were some of the worst people ever, and now they're at the end of their life. And they're feeling the weight of their mortality, and they got to get right with Christ, brother.
They even talk about that in this movie.
That's Clegg.
Because he says, even though we know that he's Clegg now, and he is the preacher, and yes, he did do that, the British officer asks him, so you gave him his last rites? His soul was saved when he died? And the preacher was like, yes, it was.
A lot of this, also what helps the British Army is that there's this snitch guy named Rash, who gets a little rapey with Yvonne Roman's character.
He's the inn bar owner.
And he ends up getting killed by Milton. And then Milton comes in and he manages to stab Clegg with the spear. He shows up out of nowhere. I think another thing that would have been cool is if Milton maybe found a costume that they were wearing when they're running into the Phantom Marshes, and then he puts it on and goes and kills Clegg. And in the closing scene, everyone, the village and the British officers, are doing like the respectful, like, this guy was a bad guy, but he was so fucking clever. He was so much of a player that we all have to give a nod to him. And then they put him in the grave that they thought he was in the whole time.
I also forgot that he actually marries the kids before he sends them away.
That's right, yeah.
They have a wedding, and then he sends them off as the British officers.
And it's
are
after
coming
that, then Milton comes and like spears his ass.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a fun little romp here. Could have used a little more spook, but there's just enough spooky in there to make it worth your while.
So the twist in this one is there's no actual monsters.
Yeah, that's it. And that Milton and Clegg's wife had
love.
consensual relations.
Yes.
So that's Night Creatures / Captain Clegg from 1962. I love these Hammer horror films. I do. They're so much fun. And I'm excited about the one we're going to talk about next week. And who knows what we're going to get, but it's called Paranoiac. So we'll see what's up. But yeah, you're going to give 1 through 5 each combined for best out of 10. I think this is a solid 3.5 for me.
I'm going to give it a 3.
That is a 6.5 out of 10. All right, yes. The movie Night Creatures / Captain Clegg by Peter Graham Scott from 1962 is in between the films Little Nicky and Nymphomaniac. Nymphomaniac, we talked about that fairly recently. Go check that fun conversation out. In the meantime, check the show notes for links to other places to find us. Horror drop every weekday. Like, subscribe, leave a comment. Let us know what you think of Hammer horror films, Captain Clegg, anything like that, all right? It was consensual between Milton and Clegg's wife. We know that. Milton was the hero.
Happy Halloween.